the galaxy had changed for humanity. Only a few decades ago, humans were limited to their own solar system, still learning how to travel to nearby stars. But now, they were part of the Interstellar Alliance, a council of many advanced alien civilizations. For most humans, this was both a source of pride and a source of nervousness. They were the newest members, the youngest species compared to ancient empires that had existed for thousands of years. Captain Daniel Reyes understood this feeling better than anyone. He was a decorated officer, known across human colonies and even among alien worlds. His fame did not come from wealth or politics, but from a recent conflict that had shaken the Alliance. A powerful raider fleet had attacked the fragile trade routes between allied planets. During the battle, Daniel had led a daring rescue that saved not only human civilians, but also thousands of alien lives. He had made impossible decisions in the heat of combat, and against all odds, his fleet had survived. That act of courage brought him recognition. Alien envoys spoke his name with respect, and humans looked to him as a symbol of their place in the stars. But fame was not what Daniel wanted. He preferred quiet service, discipline, and the comfort of his crew's loyalty. Public attention always made him uneasy, especially when it came from those outside his own species. At first, praise came in the form of official speeches. Members of the Alliance honored him during ceremonies. But soon, something unexpected began to happen. At diplomatic gatherings, Daniel noticed the eyes of the Zyari Queen. Sarathis the Zyari were one of the oldest empires in the Alliance. They were tall, elegant beings, their smooth silver skin glimmering under light. Their movements graceful as if every gesture was carefully designed. To many, the Zyari were mysterious and intimidating, their technology ancient and powerful, their fleets unmatched. And above them all stood Queen Sarathis, ruler of their people, a monarch whose presence carried both beauty and authority. During the first summit after Daniel's victory, she spoke to him. Her voice was calm, yet commanding, carrying tones that seemed to echo in the mind. She praised his courage, her words sharper and more direct than those of other leaders. Some took it as a simple gesture of respect, but Daniel noticed the way her gaze lingered. At the next gathering, she approached again. She asked about his childhood on Earth, about the sea voyages of old human explorers, about the courage of his species. It was unusual. Lalian rulers rarely cared about such personal details. And though her manner was always formal, there was a strange sense of curiosity in her words. For many, this would have been an honor. To be noticed by the Queen of the Zyari was considered a rare gift, but Daniel felt differently. Each time she came closer, he felt the weight of her attention pressing down on him. The others at the gatherings watched with envy, but Daniel wanted no part of it, so he began to avoid her when he saw her approaching during a banquet. He turned and found another conversation. When she invited him to walk the palace gardens after a council session, he claimed urgent duties elsewhere. When she spoke during summits, he kept his eyes on the reports in front of him instead of meeting her gaze. At first, it seemed harmless. A busy human captain avoiding the attention of a monarch? But soon, others began to notice. Ambassadors whispered behind their hands. Human representatives asked him privately why he was refusing her interest. Some warned him that angering the queen could bring dangerous consequences. After all, the Zyari Empire was vast, and their friendship with humanity was valuable. Yet Daniel remained firm. He would not give her the response she seemed to want. What confused others even more was the fact that Daniel was not afraid. His actions were not those of a man hiding in fear, but of someone making a quiet stand. He spoke with confidence to other leaders, never bowing more than what courtesy demanded. But when it came to Sarathis, he held back, keeping distance as though guarding something unseen. The rumors grew. Some said the human captain was arrogant, that he thought himself above alien royalty. Others claimed he was shy, unable to handle the attention of such a powerful being. A few even whispered that humans might secretly despise the Zyari. But Daniel gave no explanation. He carried on with his duties, silent and steady. While the mystery around him deepened, the tension reached a peak during the Grand Summit of Unity. a gathering where every leader of the alliance assembled to discuss matters of peace and defense. The summit was held in the crystalline halls of the Ziari capital world, a place of breathtaking beauty. The walls shimmered with living crystal, glowing softly in colors that shifted like the sky at dawn. Great banners of alien empires hung from the vaulted ceilings, and the chamber was filled with voices speaking dozens of languages. Daniel stood among the human delegation, dressed in his formal Navy uniform, his medals glinting faintly under the light. He preferred to remain unnoticed, but that day would not grant him such comfort. As the session ended and the leaders began to mingle, Queen Sarathis rose from her throne-like seat and walked directly toward him. Her tall form towered over most beings, her silver skin glowing against the crystal light. The chamber grew silent as others noticed her approach. Conversations halted. All eyes turned to the human captain. She stopped before him, her expression unreadable. Then, in a voice clear and firm, she asked the question that everyone had been waiting for. "Captain Reyes, why do you avoid me?" The words carried across the chamber. The silence deepened. Dozens of alien eyes watched, waiting for his answer. Some expected him to stumble, to apologize, to offer words of flattery. After all, this was the queen of the Ziari, ruler of one of the strongest empires in the galaxy. No one dared to offend her. But Daniel's face remained calm. He stood tall, his hands folded behind his back, his eyes meeting hers without fear. He did not rush to answer, letting the weight of the moment settle. And when he finally spoke, his voice was steady. "I do not avoid you out of fear, Your Majesty," he said. "I avoid you out of principle." The chamber filled with a ripple of whispers. The queen's expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened with sudden interest. The alien leaders leaned forward, shocked that a human would dare say such a thing to her face. But Daniel did not look away. He held his ground, his words echoing in the silence. And in that moment, everyone understood that something important was about to be revealed. No one in the grand crystalline chamber had expected such an answer. The alien delegates shifted in their seats, their voices breaking into hushed whispers. Some were shocked, some were confused, and others were simply curious. Very few beings in the galaxy had ever spoken so directly to Queen Sarathis. The queen stood tall and silent, her silver form glowing faintly in the shifting light of the hall. Her sharp eyes studied Captain Daniel Reyes, who remained calm despite the countless eyes fixed on him. He did not tremble, nor did he lower his gaze. He simply stood there, a human among empires, unafraid. Finally, the queen spoke again. Her voice was neither angry nor soft, but measured, carrying the authority of someone used to command. "Principle." She repeated, "Explain this principle, human." The entire hall leaned closer. Everyone wanted to hear his response. For weeks, rumors had spread about why he avoided her. Now, at last, the answer would be revealed. Daniel's voice was steady, clear, and simple. "Respect and trust are not gifts that come with a crown or a throne. They are earned through actions, through sincerity. You are a queen, ruler of one of the greatest empires in this alliance. Many bow to you because of your title, but that is not why I choose who to stand beside." The room grew colder in silence. Some delegates gasped quietly. Others stared at him in disbelief. For many species in the alliance, authority was absolute, unquestioned. To challenge it openly was dangerous, even foolish. But Daniel's words were not spoken with disrespect. They were calm, thoughtful, and firm. Queen Sarathis tilted her head slightly. "You suggest," she said slowly, "that my attention is unworthy?" Daniel shook his head. "No, Your Majesty. I suggest that your attention should come not from power, but from understanding. You ask why I avoid you. The truth is simple. I did not wish to be treated as a prize to be admired, but as a person to be known. That is the way of my people." A murmur spread through the audience. Some were amazed by his boldness, while others whispered that humans were reckless, too unguarded with their words. The queen, however, did not show anger. Instead, her sharp eyes softened with something unfamiliar curiosity. She had ruled for centuries. Her subjects praised her endlessly. Her council obeyed without hesitation, and other species treated her with careful formality. Never before had someone looked her in the eye and told her that titles were not enough. She leaned slightly forward. "And you believe this is strength? To deny respect to those who are born with it?" Daniel replied, "I believe true strength is shown when we treat each other as equals, regardless of rank. My people have lived under kings, emperors, and rulers. We have also fought against them. In the end, what we learned is that real loyalty is not demand. It is chosen." The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with thought. The words of a single human captain were shaking the beliefs of an entire chamber. One delegate from a minor species muttered in awe, "The humans. They speak even to monarchs, as though two friends." Another whispered, "Or as though two enemies. Dangerous." Still, the queen did not dismiss him. Instead, she studied him more carefully. For centuries she had been admired, feared, and obeyed. But now, in front of all, one man spoke to her as if she were not a queen, but simply another being. Her lips curved in a faint smile. "You are bold, Captain Reyes. Boldness can bring greatness or destruction." Daniel gave a small nod. "So can silence, Your Majesty." The chamber erupted in soft exclamations. No one dared interrupt, but every word was fuel to the fire of rumor. The queen raised her hand, and the voices fell quiet again. Her silver eyes remained fixed on him. "Very well, human. If it is principle that keeps you distant, then share this principle. Tell us of your people, so that we may understand." The request was unusual. Leaders did not often ask for stories in the middle of a summit, but the queen's command carried weight, and no one objected. Daniel drew a slow breath. He had not planned to speak, yet the moment demanded honesty. He began simply, "On Earth, my homeworld, history is filled with rulers, some wise, some cruel. Many demanded loyalty through fear, through wealth, or through blood. But in time, people rose against them. Farmers, workers, ordinary men and women, they stood against kings when they felt their freedom was stolen. Some failed, some succeeded, but each act carried a truth. Respect cannot be forced. It must be earned." The chamber listened in silence. Even those who distrusted humanity leaned closer, caught by the strange courage of this man's words. Daniel continued, his voice steady. "That is why I avoided you, Your Majesty, because I did not want to become one more voice praising a crown without knowing the person who wears it. To honor someone blindly is not our way." For the first time, Queen Sarathis lowered her gaze and thought. She was not offended. She was intrigued. Her entire life she had been treated as a symbol, never questioned, never challenged. And yet in this human's eyes, she saw no fear, only truth. After a long silence, she looked up again. "Your answer, Captain, has surprised me." The chamber seemed to breathe again. Delegates exchanged glances, trying to decide whether the queen's words were approval or warning. Daniel did not push further. He bowed his head slightly, not in submission, but as a gesture of courtesy. "I meant no insult, Your Majesty. Only honesty." The queen's expression softened further. "Honesty," she said quietly. "So rare among rulers, and perhaps among those who serve them." She let her gaze sweep across the chamber, and many leaders shifted uncomfortably under her eyes. Then she turned back to Daniel. "Very well, human. If you will not give me flattery, then you will give me truth, and I will hear it. Speak again tomorrow before this council, and tell us more of this human way." Daniel bowed his head once more. "If that is your wish." The queen stepped back, her long silver robes shimmering as she returned to her throne. The council slowly returned to order. Though the air remained heavy with unspoken thoughts, for the rest of the day, whispers followed Daniel wherever he went. Some humans congratulated him for his courage. Others warned him that he was walking on dangerous ground. Alien envoys approached him with curiosity, asking for more stories of Earth, more tales of how humans treated their rulers. But Daniel himself remained quiet. He had not sought attention, and yet now he stood at the center of it. Tomorrow, the queen would demand more truth from him. The entire galaxy would be listening. And as the crystalline halls dimmed into the glow of evening, Daniel Reyes prepared himself. He had not planned for this path, but perhaps it was time to show the Alliance what it truly meant to be human. The morning light inside the great crystal hall of the Ziari capital was soft and glowing. The walls of living crystal shifted in color like a sunrise across alien skies. Delegates from dozens of species gathered once again, their robes and uniforms shimmering under the light. The air was heavy with curiosity. Every eye turned toward one man, Captain Daniel Reyes. The human officer stood near the center of the chamber, wearing the same simple Navy uniform he always wore. There were no golden crowns upon his head, no jewels, no grand cloak. Compared to the shimmering alien rulers around him, he looked almost plain. Yet everyone knew he carried something more powerful than ornaments. He carried words that had already shaken the chamber once before. The day before, he had dared to tell Queen Sarathis that respect was not given by titles, but earned through actions. It was a boldness no one expected from such a young species. And now, the Queen herself had commanded him to speak again. Not just to her, but to the entire council. The Queen sat upon her throne of silver light, her tall figure calm and elegant. She raised one hand, and the voices of the hall fell into silence. "Captain Reyes," she said, her voice smooth yet firm, "you have spoken of principle. Today, you will speak more. Tell this council of humanity's way, and why you claim respect cannot be forced. We will listen." Daniel stepped forward. His heart beat steady, though he could feel the weight of countless eyes pressing on him. He drew a slow breath and began, his voice strong but simple. "On Earth," he said, "our story is long and filled with struggle. For thousands of years, humans lived under rulers, kings, emperors, warlords, and chiefs. Some were wise and cared for their people. Others were cruel and demanded obedience through fear." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But what is important is this: again and again, ordinary people chose to rise. Farmers put down their tools and picked up courage. Workers who had nothing but their voices stood together. They said no to rulers who forgot the meaning of service. And when they stood, the world changed." A murmur filled the chamber. Many alien rulers shifted in their seats. For them, authority was ancient, unshaken, unquestioned. The idea of common people resisting was strange, even dangerous. Daniel continued. "On Earth, respect has never lasted long when it was demanded. Fear can control for a time, yes. Power can command silence. But fear fades, and silence breaks. True loyalty, true unity, is born only when people choose it freely." He turned his eyes toward the Queen, but his words were for all. "That is why I avoided you, Your Majesty. Because I did not want to bow simply because others did. I wanted to see not the Queen, but the person. To us, that is the measure that matters." The hall grew quiet. The weight of his words touched even those who had doubted him. Queen Sarathis sat still, her expression unreadable. But in her silver eyes was something rare, a spark of curiosity, almost of wonder. "Tell us more," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "Very well. Humanity's not perfect. We have fought wars, sometimes foolish wars, against each other. We have made mistakes, great ones. But from those mistakes, we learned. We learned that progress comes when rulers listen to their people, not when they silence them. We learned that bonds of trust are stronger than chains of fear. And we learned that a leader is strongest when they stand with their people, not above them." He took a step forward. "Our explorers crossed oceans with no promise of return. Our inventors built machines that carried us to the skies, and when we reached the stars, we carried with us one truth, that greatness does not belong only to kings or queens. It belongs to anyone who dares to try." The words stirred something in the chamber. Delegates leaned closer, caught in the rhythm of his simple speech. Even those who had distrusted humanity began to feel the fire in his voice. Daniel's tone softened. "Your Majesty, I understand why you are puzzled. To your people, You are a symbol, a living crown. But to my people, we measure others not by crowns or thrones, but by deeds. When I saw your gaze, I felt not curiosity, but expectation, as if my worth was decided by your notice. That is why I stepped back. Not to insult, but to protect what it means to be human. A ripple of whispers filled the hall. Some nodded with approval, others frowned with unease. One alien leader, a scaled figure with glowing eyes, rose from his seat. "Human," he said, "do you not fear that such ideas will bring chaos? If every farmer or worker may question a ruler, how can order remain?" Daniel looked at him steadily. "Order without justice is not peace. It is only silence before the storm. True peace comes when people believe in their leaders because they choose to, not because they must." The hall fell silent again. The alien leader slowly sat down. Thoughtful, Queen Sarathis finally rose from her throne. She descended the steps slowly, each movement graceful, her silver form shimmering like moonlight. The chamber held its breath as she stopped before Daniel. Her eyes, sharp and bright, locked on his. "You speak boldly, Captain Reyes, but tell me this Sif respect is earned. Then what of me? Am I nothing but a crown to you?" Daniel met her gaze without flinching. "You are not nothing, Your Majesty, but I have not yet seen who you are beyond the crown. That is what I seek." The words struck the chamber like thunder. Many delegates gasped. To speak to the Queen in such a way was unthinkable. Yet Daniel's voice carried no insultantly honesty. For a long moment, the Queen said nothing. Her eyes searched his, as though trying to find the meaning behind his courage. She was not used to being spoken to as an equal, and yet she did not feel anger. She felt something different, something she could not name. At last she gave a small nod. "Then perhaps it is time," she said softly, "that I show you." The hall trembled with whispers. What did that mean? What would follow? But the Queen turned away, her robes flowing like liquid silver. She returned to her throne, her voice carrying across the chamber. "This council has heard enough for today. Tomorrow, we will meet again, and I will answer the humans' truth with truth of my own." The session ended. Delegates left the hall buzzing with questions. Some feared what might come next. Others were inspired, even hopeful, as Daniel walked back with the human delegation. Many envoys stopped him, eager to know more about Earth, about humanity's history, about its strange belief in equality and choice. He answered patiently, but inside. His mind was focused on the Queen's final words. She had promised to answer him not as a monarch speaking to subjects, but perhaps as a person speaking to another person, for the first time since her attention had begun. Daniel wondered if something new was beginning, something that could change not only his path, but the future of the entire alliance. And so, as the stars of the Zyari capital shone above the city that night, Daniel Reyes prepared himself for what tomorrow might bring. The next day, the crystal halls of the Zyari capital filled once more with leaders, envoys and soldiers from across the galaxy. The grand summit had never been so tense. Every delegate remembered the words spoken by the human captain, and every delegate waited for what would come next. Captain Daniel Reyes stood tall among the human delegation. His uniform was neat, his face calm, but inside, he knew that this day was unlike any before. He was not a politician, nor a trained speaker. He was a soldier, a man of action. Yet somehow, fate had placed him at the center of the most important conversation the Alliance had seen in decades. Queen Sarathis sat upon her throne of living silver, her tall frame glowing faintly in the crystal light. She had listened the day before with silence and curiosity. Now her presence seemed sharper, as though the chamber itself bent around her. When she raised her hand, all voices hushed instantly. "Captain Reyes," she said, her voice clear, "yesterday you spoke boldly. You told this council that respect must be earned, not demanded. You said that you avoided me not from fear but from principle. Today, I will hear more. Tell us of your people and why they believe in this way." Daniel nodded. He stepped forward, his boots echoing softly against the crystal floor. Dozens of alien eyes followed him, some suspicious, some admiring, all waiting. He began slowly. "Your Majesty, honored council, I will tell you not of my victories, but of my people's struggles. For on Earth, our history was shaped not only by rulers, but by ordinary men and women who chose to stand when standing was hardest." He let the silence linger before continuing. "Centuries ago, humans lived under emperors who claimed the right to rule by birth alone. But when those emperors forgot their people, when they taxed them until they starved, when they silenced their voices, the people rose. Farmers, workers, mothers, and fathers, they stood against power that seemed unshakable. And though many fell, their courage planted seeds of freedom." The council listened in stillness. To some, the story was familiar, for their own histories had shadows of rebellion. But to others, it was shocking. The idea of farmers standing against monarchs seemed almost impossible. Daniel's voice grew stronger. "We learned that courage is not born in palaces, but in fields, in workshops, in the hearts of those who have little but hope. And from this we learned, the truth leaders are not above their people. They are servants of their people. Without trust, without choice, their thrones are empty." He looked toward the queen as he spoke, his words steady. "That is why I stepped away from your attention, Your Majesty. Because I wanted to know if you sought me as a person or only as a symbol. To my people, the difference matters more than crowns or titles." A soft murmur spread through the chamber. Some nodded, their eyes shining with understanding. Others frowned, whispering warnings of danger. Queen Sarathis remained silent, her gaze fixed on him. Her eyes were sharp, but there was no anger. "Only thought," Daniel continued, his voice quieter now. "Humanity has seen much darkness. We fought wars among ourselves, wars that destroyed cities, wars that nearly ended us. But each time we rebuilt, and each time we learned again that power without compassion is empty. That is why we seek truth, even if it offends. That is why we speak to queens as we speak to friends. Because in the end, we are all the same beings who live, who hope, who fear, and who dream." The chamber fell completely silent. Then slowly, the queen rose from her throne. The crystal hall shimmered as she descended the steps, her silver robes flowing like liquid light. She stopped only a few steps from Daniel, her tall frame towering above him. "Captain Reyes," she said softly. So softly that her words carried more power than a shout. "All my life, I have been treated as something above. My people bow. My council obeys. My rivals fear. I am not questioned. I am not challenged. I am never spoken to as you speak to me now." Daniel did not flinch. He held her gaze with calm respect. The queen's voice grew thoughtful. "You say you avoided me because you wished to see the person behind the crown. And yet, I wonder, do I even know who that person is?" Her words sent a ripple through the chamber. For the first time in memory, the Queen of the Ziari spoke not as a ruler, but as a being questioning herself. Daniel answered gently, "That is the beginning of truth, Your Majesty. To ask not what others see, but what you truly are. On earth, we honor those rulers most who ask themselves the same question. They became great not because of crowns, but because they remembered their people and remembered themselves."
Ow.
The queen studied him for a long moment. Her silver eyes softened, losing some of their sharpness. "You surprise me, human," she said at last. "You stand before the rulers of 100 worlds, and instead of seeking favor, you speak only of truth. Many would call that foolishness. Yet I find myself listening." The chamber stirred with shock. To hear such words from her lips was unheard of. Daniel bowed his head slightly. "Honesty is the only gift I can offer, Your Majesty." The queen turned to face the council. Her voice rang out across the chamber. "You have heard him. A species younger than most of us, yet they bring words we have long forgotten. Perhaps we should remember. Perhaps even a queen must listen, not only command." A wave of whispers filled the chamber. Some leaders nodded with agreement. Others frowned, worried by the danger of such ideas. But none could deny the power of the moment. The queen turned back to Daniel. For the first time, she smiled not the regal smile of a ruler, but the gentle smile of a person. You wished to see the person behind the crown? Very well, Captain Reyes. Perhaps it is time I show you. Not as a queen, but as Sarathis. Daniel met her eyes with quiet respect. That is all I ever asked, Your Majesty. The hall slowly emptied after the session, but the memory of what had happened remained sharp in every mind. A barrier had been broken. For the first time in centuries, the Queen of the Ziari had spoken not as a monarch above all, but as someone willing to be questioned, willing to listen. Delegates whispered of change, of new ways of respect, of bonds not built on fear but on truth. Some feared it, some welcomed it, but all agreed on one thing. Humanity had brought something new to the alliance, and as Daniel walked through the crystalline corridors that evening, he knew that the queen had been stunned, not by insult, but by honesty. The question now was what she would do with that truth. The next day, the Grand Summit gathered once again. The air was charged with anticipation, as if the entire hall of crystal light had been holding its breath overnight. Every delegate knew that something had changed. The queen had spoken in a way she had never spoken before, and now the galaxy waited to see what would follow. Captain Daniel Reyes stood among his human delegation, quiet but steady. He had not planned to change the course of the summit. He had only spoken the truth of his people, the lessons Earth had carved into its history. Yet now, the fate of the Alliance seemed to turn on those words. When Queen Sarathis entered the chamber, all eyes followed her. She still wore her crown of silver flame, and her robes still shimmered like liquid stars, but her face was different. The sharpness had softened, replaced by something the galaxy had rarely seen in her thoughtfulness. She raised her hand for silence. Though the hall was already quiet, "Council of Worlds," she began. Her voice clear. "Yesterday, a soldier from a distant world spoke words that unsettled me. He did not bow as deeply as expected. He did not flatter as many do. Instead, he asked me to see myself not as a queen, but as a person." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates nodded. Others exchanged uneasy glances. The queen's eyes swept across the chamber. "For centuries, I have ruled as my ancestors ruled, through command, through fear, through the weight of tradition. My people obeyed because they must, not because they wished, and I believed this was strength. But perhaps it was only silence." Gasps spread across the chamber. To hear such words from the throne was unthinkable. Daniel remained still, his eyes fixed on her. The queen continued, her voice growing stronger. "Yesterday I asked myself, if the crown were taken away, what would remain of Sarathis? Would I still be honored? Would I still be remembered? Or would I fade, because all that bound others to me was fear?" The silence was absolute now. Even the faint hum of the crystalline walls seemed to vanish. Then the queen turned, her silver eyes resting on Daniel. "Captain Reyes, you told me that leaders must serve their people, not stand above them. You told me that courage is born, not in palaces, but in hearts. I hear you, and I will not forget." Daniel stepped forward slowly, bowing his head in respect, though not in fear. "Your Majesty, the fact that you ask these questions already makes you stronger than most rulers history has known. Because the first step of true leadership is the willingness to see oneself honestly." The queen studied him for a moment. Then she turned back to the assembly. From this day, she declared, "The Ziari throne will not be a tower above the people, but a bridge among them. I will listen as well as command. I will seek not only obedience, but trust. And I invite all worlds of this alliance to do the same. Let us build a council not of crowns alone, but of voices." A storm of whispers surged through the chamber. Some alien rulers looked horrified. Others looked inspired. And many most looked shaken. For the idea of shared respect was not one they had expected to hear in this hall. Daniel felt the weight of the moment. He had seen many battles in his life, but none like this. This was not a clash of armies. This was the battle of ideas, and it was one humanity, It always carried within its scars and its triumphs. The queen raised her hand once more, and the hall grew quiet. She spoke her final words with calm certainty. I remain your queen, but I will also remain Sarathis. For no crown is eternal, and no throne stands without the hearts of its people. This I have learned from the humans. May we all learn as well. The hall erupted. Some cheered openly, their voices echoing against the crystal walls. Some protested, warning of chaos and weakness. But the seed had been planted. The queen had spoken, and her words could not be undone. That evening, Daniel walked alone through the glowing gardens of the Ziari Palace. The sky above shimmered with auroras of green and silver. Casting shifting shadows across the polished stone paths, he thought of Earth, of the crowded cities, the quiet villages, the oceans that stretched into forever. He thought of how far humanity had come, and how far they still had to go. And he thought of how strange it was that a single soldier's words had changed the course of a throne. Footsteps echoed softly behind him. He turned to see Queen Sarathis. No crown upon her head now, only a simple silver cloak. For the first time, she looked less like a monarch and more like a woman. "Captain Reyes," she said, her voice gentle. "May I walk with you?" Daniel nodded. "Of course, Your Majesty." She smiled faintly. "Sarathis will do." They walked side by side through the gardens, the air filled with the scent of glowing flowers. For a long time neither spoke. Finally, the queen broke the silence. "All my life, I have been surrounded by those who obeyed. You are the first to stand before me without fear. I thought it would anger me instead. It freed me." Daniel glanced at her. "Sometimes the greatest chains are the ones we don't see until they're broken." She nodded slowly. "Perhaps one day my people will see me as more than a symbol. Perhaps they will see me as Sarathis. If that happens, I will owe much to humanity." Daniel shook his head. "Not to humanity, to yourself, because you chose to listen." They walked on in silence, the auroras shimmering above. Weeks later, the grand summit ended. The delegates returned to their worlds, carrying with them stories of the queen who had dared to question herself, and the human who had spoken truth to power. Some called it dangerous. Others called it hope. But none denied that something had shifted in the galaxy as the human ship prepared to leave orbit. Daniel stood at the viewport, watching the shining planet below. He knew that humanity was still young among the stars, still learning, still stumbling. But they had something no other species seemed to carry in the same way, the unshakable belief that no throne, no crown, no empire was greater than the worth of a single person, and that belief had now taken root in places far beyond. Queen Sarathis stood at her palace window, watching the human ship vanish into the sea of stars. For the first time in her long reign, she felt not just like a ruler, but like a part of something greater, a galaxy where respect might one day grow stronger than fear. She whispered softly to herself, words only the stars could hear. Perhaps this is what true strength feels like. Thus the story of a human captain and a galactic queen became more than a meeting of species. It became a reminder that, even in the vast cold of space, it is not crowns, nor armies, nor endless lifespans that shape destiny. It is honesty. It is courage. It is the willingness to see beyond power into the heart. And in that, humanity had given the galaxy something it had long forgotten. Not weapons, not ships, not conquest, but truth.